Bapa kami dalam kerajaan surga, Tuhan yang baik, Tuhan yang agung, Tuhan yang menciptakan langit dan bumi. Puji syukur dan terima kasih Tuhan atas berkat-Mu sepanjang hidup kami hingga saat ini. Terima kasih Tuhan Kau telah mempertemukan kami di acara seminar. Tolong Tuhan berkati kami sepanjang acara ini. Tolong juga berikanlah kami koneksi atau internet yang kami pakai ini Tuhan agar dapat berguna dengan baik, dengan lancar. Sehingga seminar ini bisa berjalan dengan baik sampai selesai. Dan juga Tuhan tolong berikan Roh Kudus dari surga, hikmat dari surga kepada keluarga Bautista yang akan nanti memberikan jawaban-jawaban dalam pertanyaan-pertanyaan kami hingga bisa membuat kami bisa mengerti, terutama firman Tuhan bisa kami hidupkan di dalam kehidupan kami masing-masing. Dan juga tolong berkati Elvira dengan Norman yang akan mentranslate nanti Tuhan, agar dapat bisa memahami dan mengerti dan disampaikan juga dengan baik ya Tuhan. Tuhan, tolong sempurnakanlah doa kami ini dan tolong ampunkan segala dosa dan perbuatan yang kami buat sengaja maupun tidak. Kami serahkan doa ini dalam nama Yesus. Amin.
Amin. Terima kasih, Sister Sharon. Okay. Good evening, Bautista family. Now I already have some questions from parents.
Can I introduce ourselves one more time?
Yes,
Because
we
have an addition. So Abang and Ade is here, Kyle and Kenneth, and I want to introduce Lauren as well. Lauren is Kenneth's special friend, and they've been going out for about a year now. And she is also homeschooled, and she is a nursing student at Southern, and she will be joining us. Say hi, Lauren.
Hi, everyone.
Yes.
Hi, Lauren.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Jocelyn will not be able to join us today.
Hi, Kenneth.
And because she is driving to go see her sister. But I'm sure Abang will fill in her shoes. And you got to meet her already last week. So please feel free to ask them any questions. And I give it to you now. Back to you, Terry. Thank you for having us again.
Okay, thank you. For the first question, okay, I take a look first. Okay, for you, Irene and Brother Elaine, the Bible told us that we need to discipline our children with rod, but Ellen White told us to be gentle with them. How do we balance this? What are the general rules until what age should we stop disciplining them physically? Do I sound clear?
The boys got enough rods, right, boys? Abang, did you get a rod? Yes. But we have to understand, and I made mistakes, obviously, that we cannot hit them when we're mad because it's called child abuse. And there's a lot of other kinds of rods, whether it be spanking is just one of them. Other kinds of punishments like restrictions and all those other things, you have to ask wisdom on how to do it. And it has to be age appropriate. When they're starting to understand, then, you know, I stopped hitting when they were ready, spanking, not hitting, because it was always hard for me. I would sometimes turn around. The boys didn't know this, but I would turn around to my wife and I'd say, "Man, I'm an awful dad. You know, I spanked my kids today." But the kids never saw this, obviously. But you know, I had to be strong. I had to be the strong dad. But there were times when I feel really terrible. And how do you know when they're ready to listen to instructions? When they're ready. I don't know. How do you guys felt about that? Ask the boys how they felt about the rod. How there's different kinds of rods and you know things like that. You can ask them, boys. Lauren?
I think that when it came to like getting spanked or stuff like that, like there's definitely a time and a place for it. Like when you're little, you don't really understand like why it's wrong or stuff like that. But when you're like around the age, I want to say like around the age of like 12, 13, you know if it's right, you know if it's wrong, and if you get in trouble and you know you're doing something wrong, then then it's time for the parents to kind of sit you down and say, listen, now is the time, and then you could talk it out, and so you move on from just spanking and just discipline punishment to bigger things like talking it out, or maybe taking away their phone privileges, something that matters more during that time, because spanking isn't always a thing. And I think when Ellen G. White talks about being gentle, it's a mix of that, right? Because spanking hurts, yes, but you can be gentle about it. You could say, listen, I'll just put Lauren on the spot here. Lauren, say she's a child or something, right? Terrible. But you could just say, like, listen, I don't want to do this, but because you've made this mistake, I'm going to have to discipline you, right? Now that's being gentle to her, but we're also spanking her. We're also letting her know this is the consequences, because there's consequences to every actions, and so that's what I think.
And if I can add to that, each child is different, and each child receives discipline in different way. Like for example, with Kenneth, between Kyle and Kenneth, they were so different. Kenneth was a child that if I get angry at him, he would get more angrier at me. If I raise my voice at him, he will raise his voice more at me. And it was a challenge for me. And I still remember there was this one time, and I think he was between 7 and 8 years old, and his dad was not there. And when, at that time, my husband was traveling somewhere, and I think I've shared this with you. Some of you have heard this story, but I got so frustrated because, I spanked him in the butt, and I always spank them in the butt and in the behind. And it's not hard because Kenneth sometimes even laughs when I hit him on his behind because he knows it doesn't hurt, but that's the only way I know how. Or anyway, and so I got so frustrated one day because he kept on doing the same thing over and over again that I told him, I said, you know what, Ken? I don't know what to do with you. I am so frustrated. In fact, I was so frustrated that I started crying. And I told him, I said, I don't think that I'll be able to go to heaven. And Kenneth looked at me and was like, why? He goes, because I can't even discipline my child. And when Jesus asked me, where are your kids that I give you? And I didn't have an answer, I said, then Jesus would tell me, like, you know what? Okay, since you can't take care of your kids, then I'm sorry. I can't bring you to heaven. I mean, this wasn't what I tell him, it's not the whole truth. I know it's more of a scare tactic, which is not right. Well, anyway, and so I left the room and Kenneth was thinking, and then about 15 minutes later or so, he came into the room and he seeked me out. He went to look for me and he says, Mom, can I tell you a secret? I said, what is it? And he says, when you talk to me nicely, it hurts right here. When you only spank me, it only hurts in my bottom. And from that moment, I realized that the way to Ken's heart is to talk to him, is not to be harsh on him, is not to, to punish him in a way that will hurt him physically, because it doesn't work, but actually to speak to him in a way that he can understand and in a way that can touch his heart. But again, it depends on the maturity level of the child. At that time, Kenneth was already 7, so he understood when I was speaking to him in a way that hopefully will touch his heart. And ever since then, I never disciplined him any other way.
Abang, what do you think?
I mostly agree with that everyone has said so far. And yes, you know, it's true. We're all different. Um, and the like mom and Adet said, there's different ways. Like as I started getting older, the talking really was just like it was like, man, you know, it really makes me think. And I would sometimes prefer getting spanked over the talking, right? Because it's like mom said, like the getting spanked it's fine, like you can get over it. But then when you start like really thinking of the ramifications of your actions and stuff, right, as you go older, then that does make a difference. So there's a time where it needs to stop. But I think the biggest thing is that not is for it not to be done out of anger, right? Whatever it is, whether it's the disciplining or just make sure like that the person like I knew I understood why I was always getting, or my parents made sure that I understood why I was getting punished. And I think that was super important because I could still see it as like an act of love and not an act of, you know, anger or something like that.
And also the discipline has to be appropriate with the action. So for example, if your child accidentally spills what do you call
Water or
it,
something.
water or food all over the place,
Unintentional.
and it's an accident, it is not a time to hit them.
Or
It's not the time to,
yeah, or tell them, oh, it's your fault. You know, just
Mhm.
help them pick them up.
yes,
You know, just do it. I
Yes.
mean, don't. It's not a time to lecture. They're kids. They're gonna spill things.
Mhm.
They're gonna do things. So accidents and intentional disobedience is different.
yeah. When they
And-
intentionally disobey you, that's when.
Go ahead, Ade.
Right. I think I have an example of that is when I remember I was small. I was maybe like 6, 7, and we went to a water park. Um, and I remember I wanted to stay in the water as long as I could. So I just kept swimming and kept swimming, and I had to go to the bathroom. I had to go poop, and I really had to go. But there was so many slides. There was so much water. It was so exciting, and so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna hold it in. I'm gonna hold in my poop as long as I can. And then I couldn't hold it in anymore, and so I just pooped my pants. And um, I went to dad. I remember dad was there. I was like, Dad, I think I just pooped in my pants. And he's like, okay. He didn't say anything. He just took me to the bathroom, and he went to the sink and he just washed. He made me go to the stall, take off my shorts, and he just washed them and washed them and washed them. And then um, he put it back on, and then we just went back out there. And I think I see a lot of parents in that situation where their kids makes a mistake. They spill, like mom said, they poop their pants, and parents just get so mad at them. They're like, why do you do this? What are you doing? You know, and they spank them or they expose them in front of public, in front of their friends. And I think that's the difference too, is there's a line between when they've messed up, when they've directly disobeyed, when they've lied, when they've stole something, you know, stuff like that, when they don't listen to what you're trying to tell them, and mistakes. And mistakes happen a lot, but a lot of parents mess that up, or maybe discipline during mistakes. And so realizing that is the biggest thing, I think.
Terry, I hope that answers the question. Hopefully.
Oke, Amang dan Ade, ini untuk Kyle dan Kenneth. Halo, halo, can you hear me? Halo, suaranya bisa kedengaran?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. This question is for Kyle and Kenneth. Parents and friends' parents before going.
Sorry, we can't hear you. If maybe you could type it in the chat and we could read it from the chat, that might work better.
Okay, how about I repeat once again? ask permission from your parents and girlfriend's parents before Kyle and Kenneth still cannot hear my voice, yeah?
Maybe I'll just help. I'll help.
Hello? Yes, can you help me?
Okay, sure. The question is for Kyle and Kenneth. Did you ask permission from your parents and your girlfriend's parents before going out with your girlfriends? Sorry, we're just passing the questions.
Tell the truth, only the truth.
Adet should go first.
I did not. So Lauren and I liked her for a while, and I remember I did talk to my parents about it. I talked to my parents about her, and they met her before we started dating, and they liked her as a person, and then we started dating. So I asked her out, and just before we made it official, kind of to everyone else, to all of our friends, everyone else, we sat because her parents live in California, and we sat on a phone call, and I asked them through a phone call, and they said yes. And so I definitely got the parents' approval before we took it to the next level, before kind of everyone knew about it. But I didn't ask my parents, "Mom, can I date her?" I didn't say that. But yeah, I asked them before we went to become like public, I guess.
Yeah, while I was talking to Jocelyn, my parents met her before, and like they knew of like the interest and things like that. And I also met her parents before, like in person, and I made sure that they knew how it was and stuff like that, you know, before. It wasn't just like out of nowhere. And they had been talking about it for a long time. And there was actually a long period to before, you know, I was with Jocelyn, of where we were talking, like I spoke with her parents, like we were, you know, there was an understood like that we were going to be together for probably like 6 months, maybe something like really long like that, before we made it pretty serious.
So I'm going to ask Lauren, how did you feel about that, Lauren, when he asked and made it official with your parents?
I was very impressed at first because, like, right after he asked me if I'd be his girlfriend, he said that he wanted to talk to my parents. So that was just kind of a nice surprise, because I think like a lot of people don't do that nowadays. So that was just I was impressed by that. But yeah, when he talked to my dad, and my dad was he was very supportive of us, but he just said like the most important thing is that he's not like leading me away from God or anything like that. So he very emphasized that, and but yeah, we got their approval, so that was nice.
And one thing the boys did was they introduced Lauren and Jocelyn to us, and you know, they asked for counsel, and they asked for our approval, and you know, those kind of things as parents do. And you know, it's not that we reject or anything. It's just it was nice that we have that established relationship where we can be open, because it's a family thing. It's something that we work on as a family. I hope that answers your question. They're being honest.
Okay, thank you. We're going to the next question. The question is again for the kids. What do you notice different about you, homeschoolers, and your friends from regular school? Positive and negative ones. Side. Most unforgettable moments being homeschooler.
Okay, one thing that I think I learned the difference between both of us is sometimes it's especially hard for at least homeschoolers that I see, to integrate into group circles and have group conversations, mainly because when we have friends, they aren't that big. And like the friends that we do have, we've known for forever. And this isn't like true for everyone, but I know this can be like true for a majority of the friends that I know. Like initially getting to know people can be tough, but you know, there is a little bit of like this social gap that you may need to try to work on as a homeschooler, but it's not that difficult, and it's not impossible. Like we do have very good social interactions over time, and we get better with them through time. When it comes to anything academic, I wouldn't say as much. I would think that most homeschoolers, at least that I know, um, and us, for example, don't have that hard of a time prioritizing academics and making sure that we get the schoolwork done. Right? Like I think that's a very good pro um, from like the homeschooler side. What do you think, Ade?
I think that for homeschoolers, yeah, you're right. Sometimes I think the con is the social interactions, but I do think that the positive, sorry, is you're grounded, you know, because you have your parents with you and teaching you what's right and what's wrong. I feel like when you go off to academy and stuff like that, you're not as swayed by the crowd. It doesn't. It matters what people think, but it doesn't matter as much, and you're not like put into peer pressure, or you don't want to start drinking necessarily. And so I think that homeschooling brings a stronger foundation, and probably some of the best memories I have homeschooling was just with my brother in the mountains of the Philippines, maybe like throwing a football around or playing basketball in our house, or just creating and making up games that we can, um, because we were bored and we had no idea what to do. So that was a big thing um, as being a homeschooler.
Yeah, something that when it comes to like peer pressure and interactions, though, the parents do have a big plan to that, right? If the prime motivation, I think, in opinion, is fear based, and it's like, oh, I'm just not doing this because I'm afraid that my parents will find out. That's very different than instilling values and rules, right? And I have seen both sides of that, right? Like, I have seen some people who go to like homeschooling and then they just try to do everything to fit in, right? They're not like grounded and strong. And then there are those who they are who they are, and then they create their own friend group based on that. And so I think these are things that will be tested, and there's a lot of things that will be tested once like homeschooling leaves. But that's the point of homeschooling, right? To prepare everything, to prepare the character for that big testing ground when they go into the real world. And yeah, as far as unforgettable moments, it's the making games with my brother. Like we really had to get creative with playing with each other. And since we both had like we were both in different ages and different heights, we would purposely like make games that we would try to both compete. And sometimes like I would win a lot just because I was taller. But then as we got like older, then he would win a lot, and we would make other games. Things like that, I think, really push the creativity. So now when we have friends, you can all create these games. You have these like unlimited creativity, and it's just really good, I think, to be in that stage of life.
One thing I do know also as a homeschooler that helps a lot is you're not used to like what's socially acceptable or something, you know? So for example, at school, I know that at school, when I first came to school, like people would like, I guess like the cool kids would say hi to some people, or they'd be like, hey, what's up? You know what I mean? But for me as a homeschooler, I didn't know that there was like, you weren't supposed to say hi to everyone, or maybe you were supposed to say hi to everyone. So I said hi to everyone. Like, it doesn't matter who they were. Like in the hallway, I'd be like, what's up? What's up? How you doing? And sometimes I got weird looks, but I made a lot more friends that way, because I didn't know what everyone else did, and so I just kind of based it off of what I saw with my parents and how I was brought up, and so I think that being a homeschooler didn't put me in a box as much, and I was able to like grow more as a person.
What do you think, Lauren?
I agree with what both of them said. I especially think like what Kyle said, that like as a homeschooler, like you might be kind of sheltered. So when you get out to the real world, you either go crazy because you want to try out all the new things, or you are like, you stay true to yourself. And I think that's really important with like parents, making sure that the kids are comfortable being themselves so that they don't have to try to fit in when they get to school.
I hope that answers your question. Yeah, or anybody else have any comments?
I think it's enough. Okay, we go to the next question. In your opinion, how this is for Irene and Ellen. In your opinion, how many hours a day for kids with age 7 and 9 years old to study for academic lesson?
Well, see, with the boys, because they were boys, staying between age 7 and 9, sitting in a desk is like torture to him.
That was Kenneth.
Especially Kenneth.
That
It was
Kenneth.
like torture for Ken to sit still in a desk, writing or reading. And the beauty of homeschooling is that teaching or studying is not just sitting down and reading. So there were times where Ken and I would play games because he couldn't concentrate. And that would be like, for example, with his spelling. I don't know if you remember this. He had really had a hard time spelling. And so we would play with the ball. So I would throw him the ball and he would give me a letter that he would have to spell. So in a whole, academically, probably 3 hours the most. And that 3 hours is not sitting down in a desk. That 3 hours can be done in a various ways. The point is for them to learn, not for them just to sit still in a desk. Whereas with Kyle was a kind of child that he would be okay sitting down. He could sit down for a long period of time and he would not get bored. So each child is a little bit different.
Kyle didn't start homeschooling till he was like 8. You know, Ken wanted to get involved, so he started at 6 because they're 2 years apart. He wanted to do what Abang was doing. So, you know, it's just age appropriate. Mm-hmm. And council tells us we can delay them and then their learning will be much more accelerated. I never taught them phonics or anything like that. When they were ready, they were able to read. You know, it's just the development of their brain. And each child is different. Boys especially, they're different.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're more into playing, much more physical. We had, you know, they were working the yard, they would pick up sticks, whatever it would be. What do you think, boys?
I think something that that can be used, that I was always told, even when I was doing homeschooling with my opung, was setting a timer. Like there would be a timer for how long I need to do certain things, right? Like 30 minutes. And then I would just sit down and write for 30 minutes. And then after that, we would go do something else, right? We would either go outside, like my brother and I would go play outside, or we would need to finish like specific things. So it's not necessarily like sitting one time doing all this stuff, right? It's really like spaced out with the timer. And we also are playing outside would also be timed. Like my parents would have this bell that they would ring, and then when they rang the bell, my brother and I knew that it was time to come back. So, you know, it's I think it's important to space it out, and it's maybe not so much as how many hours are they sitting there doing it, it's how much they're actually learning, because they could be sitting there, you know, not learning anything and be very bored. That wouldn't be great, right? It's like maximize the learning, maximize the efficiency.
Yeah, I agree. Because me and my sister, we're not as active as Kenneth and Kyle, obviously, when we were younger. So my mom would do the same thing, and she would set like timers for like we have to be super focused for this amount of time, and then we can go out and play or play with our toys or eat lunch or something like that. So we weren't just sitting down like for consecutive hours. It was like we take breaks, and yeah, because that just helped us to be able to focus when we came back from our breaks. Because we weren't just super mentally tired or anything like that.
And that's what's hard as a parent, I think, to have a homeschool kid, because you can't just give them a book and expect them to know everything. Because honestly, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They're just going to pretend like they did, or they're just going to be on their phone or something. You need to guide them step by step through the parts, or at least show them how it's done first before they do it. And so being a parent and homeschooling is time consuming, but it's also rewarding.
Yeah, thank you, Abang and Lauren. I agree with that. That's the hard. Okay, we're going to next question. Are we as a parents need to make a daily schedule when we are doing homeschooling? Maybe Irene can help to answer this.
Well, Kyle and Ken, you can answer that question for me.
I think a daily schedule would definitely be helpful. Are you talking about a daily schedule in terms of like waking up, or a daily schedule in terms of like what you're going to learn in homeschooling?
The parents just say the daily schedule. Maybe when you go to school, you have a schedule like what time you go get up, what time you go, yeah, to do this lesson, and then what next. How about the homeschool? Are you free to choose what you have to do, or you have the routines?
No, so yeah, we actually did have a routine. It's very structured. And this is, of course, this is very true in life too. Like you can't always just pick and choose what you want to do, right? So we used to have these magnetic boards that would have like wake up times and what we need to do for each day. It had like these little pins that said, oh, we need to wake up, we need to drink water, we need to, and that was like very structured throughout the day. And we tried to eat lunch and eat breakfast at, specific times and still continue to do that like continually. It may have been pushed, like we could wake up a little later than other kids, but as far as a structure goes and doing things as like a routine, that was always very laid out. And that I think is super helpful. Like even today, I still follow, a routine or a schedule that's like that. So yes, I think that's pretty important.
I think the schedule kind of puts especially parents and their kids on the right track. It knows like what I need to do. Even if they don't 100% follow it, it's a good foundation to get the ball rolling.
And I noticed because we had a schedule, I did not have to tell the boys, brush your teeth, go shower, do this. I didn't have to tell them step by step what to do because it's already been discussed of what is expected of them. So mom and dad, it will help you. You don't have to constantly
repeat yourself.
Yeah. Or, follow your kids around and ask them, did you do this? Did you do that? Because if you actually, but then you also as a parent have to be structured. You have to be disciplined by following these guidelines, because you can't expect your children to follow the schedule if you don't follow the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask some questions?
Maybe we have follow-up questions regarding this issue.
Ya.
Dan ibu-ibu yang lain kalau misalkan ada pertanyaan lanjutan terkait dengan penjelasan dari warga Bautista, dari Kyle dengan Kenneth, boleh ya, silakan. Ini benar-benar kita boleh diskusi. Boleh juga dibantah kalau kira-kira memang nggak sepakat dengan dengan pembahasannya atau jawaban seperti ini. My follow-up. Yes, Ter. Aku tanya satu hal, boleh ya, Ter? Boleh ya.
So, Irene.
So
yeah, Nita.
Okay. So Kyle and Kenneth, so what do you do? What did you do when, for example, it is time for Kyle to learn math, but he doesn't feel like want to learn math that day? Is it still flexible, or you still need to do that at that right hour that has been scheduled, or How do you manage that situation?
So I think I remember having to do flashcards, and I didn't really like using to do flashcards before, and we would have like these flashcards that we would need to do. And I think overall it's better to do things not because like I don't think just because someone doesn't feel like doing something is a good justification why they shouldn't do it. Right. So every single day I actually needed to do math. So the way that we would do things is I would have all my subjects and then I would do all my subjects in one day. So I would just need to get through it. And for each subject, I knew like what I needed to accomplish because we followed this plan, right? And so there was a certain time where I needed to do math. And when I would do math, I would just have to do math. Like I couldn't tell my parents like, oh, I don't feel like doing this, right? And they'd be like, what do you mean you don't feel like doing it? Like you need to do it. And so I would go ahead and do it. And of course, using that timer helps too, because like, let's say, right, the child's like, oh, I really don't feel like doing this today. Well, just tell them you need to do 30 minutes of this today. And so they'll do it for 30 minutes. And often, eventually, even for kids, even if they don't feel like doing it, if they just start it, then they'll be able to be fine after a while. Like you just give them a set time and say, okay, after this, then you can go play and you make sure that they concentrate on it. I think that'll work.
I mean, as adults, there's so many things we don't want to do, like homework and stuff like that, but we don't stop just because we don't want to. There's no reason why a child should just stop just because they don't want to.
And the reality is, like, it's not like just because you don't want to do something that'll just go away. Like, you're gonna have to do it eventually. So it's just a matter of time, like when you're gonna do it. So might as well get it done. That's what my mom always explained.
Is it answer your question, Ina?
Yeah, thank you.
Ada lagi yang mau nambahin? Gak ada. Kita ke pertanyaan selanjutnya ya.
Dong Kak,
Ada?
boleh aku kira-kira
Oke, silakan.
pakai bahasa ya Kak. Kira-kira kalau bikin schedule yang sudah matang gitu ya, jam sekian, kira-kira umur berapa ya bisa kita lakukan?
Well, actually, I've always had a schedule from a very beginning, only because it will help me to know what to do next. Tapi schedule-nya is not, of course, it depends on the age. It's age appropriate. So for example, when they were toddlers, their schedule is waking up, praying, brushing their teeth, making their beds. I mean, those things. It was not like time as in at 7:15, 7:30. It wasn't like that. It was more like a routine that they would have to follow. But then as they become older and they begin to understand time and clock, then that's when I actually emphasize on, okay, you need to wake up at 6 o'clock. You need to get everything ready and prepared for morning worship by 7 o'clock and things like that. So it's depending on the age appropriate, but schedule was always there for me, for us.
Because before the age of 3 to 5, before that time, they already ingrained unwritten rules in the house. Yeah. Those unwritten rules are, time to wake up, routine, like praying before meals, bringing your dishes there, helping. Those are unwritten rules, and those are ingrained before the age of 5. So we specifically targeted character building on how they can develop routines for their adulthood. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sure when the boys wake up in the morning, they go grab a drink of water, right? Because that's always something that I've done for them. I've always told them, drink your water first, get your body going. And then, of course, they pray, things like this, and they pray before meals. And when they're in the home, they help out in the kitchen because we've always instilled, if somebody's doing something in the kitchen, more hands make work done faster, right? So, those are the things that are routine, that they've started when they were very, very small. Yes, they made a mess when they were younger, but when they were older, it carried them on. And I can tell you that wherever they may be, or any house that they're gonna go help. They're gonna go help in the kitchen. They're gonna say, how can I do to help? Those are very important qualities that you want to be ingrained in them. The sense of serving, the sense of love for other people, the sense of caring. Those are learned first, unwritten rules that they take to their adulthood. What do you boys think?
I think a schedule is definitely helpful. You know, it doesn't need to be like every single hour of the day, right? But just a general idea, so that when there's nothing to do or you see them, like horsing around or something, at least there's some structure to what should be done during this time, what shouldn't be done. And I think if they can realize that structure, then they know what should be done throughout the day. And obviously, like, it doesn't need to be super rigorous, but I would say if you can do that as soon as possible, that way they have an idea and they can like take it out for life. That would be very good.
Ibu-ibu ada yang mau nambahin lagi? Atau ada yang mau bertanya lagi? Terkait untuk masalah schedule ini? Udah ya? Oke. Pertanyaan selanjutnya.
Apa
ya?
anak-anak yang pernah nolak, aku nggak mau schedule ini, pernah nggak anak-anak kayak Ate menolak untuk melakukan?
Well, what we did is that we did it together. I sit down with them and I went through the schedule with them. So that we discussed it together. So I personally don't remember the boys saying, I don't want to, because it was them who also helped me to put it together.
Ate mau tanya, jadi jadwal kalau mau masih kecil itu jadwalnya ditulis atau secara rutin aja?
Well, like Kyle said, we had a board, like a magnetic board. When they were small, it was with pictures. So they can see the pictures, they understand what they needed to do. And then as they were getting older, then it was written. But it was something that everybody can see. It was a big board that everyone can see and everyone knows what they're supposed to do.
If I understand the question right, some kids say, I don't feel like doing it, or I don't want to do it, or, I'm tired, right? All these are, to me, excuses. I've never allowed the boys to say, I'm bored. The moment they said that, I thought of many things, right, boys? Yes? No? Maybe? And I always told them that, life is not fair. Life is not fair, and you have to persevere. You have to move forward. And when I told you this before, when they slipped and fell, I told them to get back up, because no one's going to help you. Right? These are just things that I did to encourage them that don't give up. We got to keep going. Right? What do you boys think?
I think if they say that they don't want to use the schedule, of course it's going to be hard in the beginning, right? It's always going to be hard in the beginning. But that's, I think, what's great about being kids is that their shape, their frame of mind or things can still be shifted, right? They can still be taught what the right way and what the wrong way is. And you need to get on a schedule if you want to try to succeed or stay organized as you grow older. So I think, even if they don't feel like it in the beginning, it's okay. They can learn to grow into it.
Whenever me and my sister would like protest about doing like chores or something like that, my mom would always just tell us that like that's what we do to contribute to the family. Like the dad works, the mom cooks, like the kids, we kind of just help with that to make like so that we're all working together. And so yeah, like not feeling like doing something was like never an excuse that they would let us use, because there's always a reason for what we're doing.
Does that answer your question, or maybe?
Thank you.
Okay. We move to next question. How to make kids with age 7 and 9 years old love reading a book without being asked and accompany them?
How long is that?
Like foster the love for reading is one of the biggest books that we were actually interested in. Can you hear me?
Sorry, Kyle, you're not clear, son. Can you repeat it?
Is this better? Is this better? Okay. All right. So something that my parents did to really foster my love for reading, especially ages 7 through 9, was giving us stories that were actually interesting and also things that we were interested in. So like ever since we were super young, my parents would always read to us before we went to sleep. And they used to be stories that we would be interested in, like real stories of real people doing amazing things. And so when it came to reading, naturally, these are the things that I wanted to know. So I think that's how reading begins, and like a love for reading, no matter what age is give them stuff that they're first interested in, right? That they actually really, really want to know. And then don't be too worried about, you know, um, where that's going to go, because once they find a love for reading, it's just going to expand from there. Like you're going to love this one part, and then you're just going to branch off to love more. Like I first started hearing like biographies from my parents who would read them for me. Then I started reading biographies, and then I really got into business books and then self-help books, and now I'm going back into reading like biographies. And I also read like novels and stuff before, but now those things aren't as interesting to me, mainly because, you know, like I've kind of explored that. And I think that's the best way to introduce reading to people as well. Either like reading to them, or maybe if you can find audiobooks if they like audiobooks. But there's something about stories and information that, you know, if your child likes them, they will definitely, like, if it perks their interest, they'll definitely want to continue reading. It's just finding out what that is.
Yeah, my parents, when we were starting from when we were like toddlers, they would get like a bunch, like this big stack of like storybooks, like kids storybooks from the library, and they would just read to us every night before bed. And like they would get different types of stories. So if we found something that we liked, like once we started being able to read, they would take us to the library and we would try to find those books for ourselves.
I hope that helped.
I think Tara is coming back, trying to come back. It might be okay. Tara, go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. The next question is, which one is better? Learning from a book with a traditional type, like a book with a handprint, or from ebook from a handphone or like a laptop? Because regarding to paperless, environment friendly, Sedangkan kalau we learn from laptop, ada bahaya radiasi.
I
Which
think
one
it's different for a lot of different people. Like some people do really good with reading from the book, you know, having that physical thing there and maybe writing notes. But other people also do well with typing stuff out, typing things out, and reading online books, because maybe they have videos on online books, you know, that you could watch to learn. I think everyone's different, but I do know one thing: a book doesn't have YouTube on it. And so for me personally, if I'm reading from a book, I'm less distracted. That being said, most of my books are online, and it's harder sometimes to stay focused online if I get distracted.
Yeah, there's a lot of temptations when you're doing things online to distract yourself because, you know, when you're just reading a book by itself, there's nothing that's going to pop up to tell you to look at this or as a suggestion. Then it's, you know, you're able to concentrate more.
Abang?
I think that's very true too. I would always prefer paper over like especially reading books. But as I've gotten older, and as you go into college, I think more and more things are online, and so you know, but that adjustment can be made later on. Something that I think should be emphasized though, when you're homeschooling, and a true like hard part I think for many homeschool people, are taking notes from lectures. Like in college and things like that, you're going to be listening to lectures. They're going to be very different from what you had in homeschooling. So you need to learn how to take notes, right? You need to learn how to do those things, and most of that will probably be done on paper. You know, and so I think that learning from paper is always better. I mean, that's how I learned. That's how I find, you know, the most efficient. But eventually, because it's much easier for you to go from paper like to the computer rather than the computer to paper, and there's much less distractions on the paper. So maybe especially in the beginning, just go straight with paper.
Kalau aku mau nanya juga, kalau misalnya untuk anak kecil kayak 5 years old gitu kan sekarang udah ada yang learning online kayak learning English atau komputer. Nah, itu disarankan atau enggak? Lebih baik dari buku aja atau enggak, gimana?
Well,
Translate it first.
so the question that Terry had is like, if you have a 5 years old, and is it okay for them to start learning online, like learning how to speak English online, you know, things like that?
I think 5 years old is a little too early to be learning, actually. I think it's playtime, and they can learn other things. They can learn to speak English with you or to interactions towards others. But I don't think the maturity of the mind, I mean, it all depends, you know, boy, girl, you know, intellectual level, so on and so forth. But I believe in the later is better because the mind is more mature and more ready to accept certain things.
And see, one thing too, though, mom and dad, that you have to understand, the more screen time your children have, the less time you have with them to build relationships. The less time you can connect with them. And that is, I think, one of the trap of online, is that it takes away that valuable time between parents and child. And it is easier, I'm not going to lie to you, as a parent, it is easier when your child does something by themselves, because then you're free. Then you don't have to ngomel-ngomel. Then you don't have to get angry. Then you don't have to get impatient and frustrated. But it's also you're not getting that connection of relationship between you and your child.
Remember, you only have a window of time and opportunity to be with your children. I mean, we're in a stage now where I miss my boys. I miss them. I have to make appointments, to go visit them, right? But that time for me went by so fast, and I miss them dearly. But they have to continue on with life. They have their own lives now. They're planning things, doing things. But the bonding time is so precious that sometimes we feel like, oh man, it's so frustrating. These kids, so on and so forth. But you know what? Looking back, it flew very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I miss them dearly. But, it's okay. It's part of life. It's bonding time now. Bonding time.
So Terry, there's a question from Sunita here. Should we read it or do you want to go ahead and read it?
It's okay. You can go on.
Okay. So, which is a very good question. Was there a time where both of you as parents disagree on how to treat the children? If yes, how do you usually manage the situation? Oh yeah, there's
many times. many times.
One thing that I have to learn, and it was hard in the beginning, especially in the way my husband disciplined the boys. As a mom, I am a lot more gentler. As a mom, I am more sympathetic. When the boy starts crying, it will melt my heart. I'm like, oh, I don't think I can. But with my husband, he's very firm. And so when there were times when I did not agree with how he disciplined, I had to leave. I have to leave the situation, and I just have to trust that my husband will always do what is best for the boys. It's not easy. There are times when I leave angrily. There's times when I'm like wanted to rescue the boys, but I had to allow him to be the dad. Because if I'm against him, then the boys will not be able to respect him as a disciplinarian. So we can discuss it, and we do. We discuss it afterwards.
That's when I feel really bad.
When it's closed doors, when the boys doesn't hear it, that's when I get mad at him. I'm like, why did you do that? How did you do? It was, the boys had no idea, but I'm like, oh, that was so hard. That's when I just let it. And then he feels bad, and then I feel bad because he feels bad.
But you have to show the children that you are one. Because the moment they realize that you are not one, like I remember Kyle when I was disciplining him, and his mom walked by and he said, "Mommy, mommy," and I had to tell my wife, "Go, just leave, go." And from then on, they don't manipulate us. I don't think. I don't know. What do you boys think?
Ade, can you answer because Abang cannot connect the mic?
Well, I'm not a parent, but I do think that, it does matter, the connection between mom and dad and making sure they're on the same page.
Like if a child figures out that one parent is like wants to discipline nicer than the other, they will never go to that other parent that will discipline in a meaner way. They'll always suck up to the one that's nicer to them because they know they won't get as much of a punishment. So yeah, I think it's really important that the mom and dad are in tune with what they have to do, and just be able to agree on what has to be done.
See, sometimes we think that if, for example, we want to win our child's heart by being, lenient to them You know, like if the husband says no, then like if the dad says no, then the mom says it's okay. No, don't listen to your dad. You know, that actually destroys the family's relationship, because then the child sees that mom and dad are not united, and it gives them a sense of insecurity. You think that as a mom, you're being kind to your kids, but in a way, it makes the child not be able to trust the dad.
Not only that, when in-laws are involved and other relatives are involved. I mean, my in-laws and my parents thought I was a tough disciplinarian, and they didn't like that. But Irene always said, "Let him do what he needs to do," and of course, it was all age appropriate. However, there was friction. There was friction because I wanted to discipline them a certain way. They needed to listen. They needed to obey. My hand was set, and that was it. And it also teaches respect and other things that the boys. I don't know. What do you guys think? Ken, Kyle?
Yeah, actually, it will be my follow-up questions, because during our book reading time, many of the mothers also asking the question of how we solve the problem on the intervention of extended families that stay together at the same house, especially opungs, oma. Yeah, how and this is usually between the mother and mother-in-law. So they always ask how to solve the problem nicely. It's very hard.
Yeah. Very good question, because the level between parents and grandparents are like this. With the parents, we want to have a high standard for our children. We want them to be a certain way. We expect them to behave a certain way. Whereas with the grandparents, it's like, now is my turn to spoil our grandchildren, to allow them to have everything they want, because we've already done this part with you as a parent. Now as a grandchild, to the grandchild, I want to give them everything they want.
Sometimes the grandparents forget how heavy-handed they were.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they forget that they were parents at one
Exactly.
point, things like this. So we have to talk to them and say, we're trying to raise our children a certain way. We're trying to do this a certain way. We're trying to be proactive a certain way. And I always tell them, just like when you were disciplining us, right? It's our turn now. So please, when I'm disciplining them, just leave. Just go. They don't like the process, but they like the outcome.
The result.
The result. Like homeschooling. I'm sure everybody and some of your parents say you're crazy, right? My kids were homeschooled. They only like the result afterwards. Oh yeah, that was a good after, right? But in the process, what did they say? Oh, they're gonna be socially impaired, they're gonna be this, they're gonna be that, right? Being vegetarian, they're not gonna get enough protein, so on and so. I mean, you've heard it all. But they all like the result afterwards. No one's questioning the results now. However, it's the process. And I think it's the process.
The one thing that you need to do is that you need to set a boundary with your in-law or with your parents, saying that there's an understanding, mom and dad, we want the best for our kids. And you need to trust us that we want the best for our children.
Spirit of Prophecy says grandparents are not the best person to raise their children, to raise your children. So I don't know. What do you boys think, Lauren? Amang?
Yeah, I think my parents did a very good job of making sure that that didn't happen, or when they did discipline me, it was away from them. And so I think that was very important. But they also taught me to respect them as well. So I should also respect my grandparents if, you know, they wanted to say something and discipline me, but they usually didn't discipline me. It was my parents. And I can see where that can be like points of contention, especially if they all live in the same home. But I think that's important as a kid to know that my parents are the main people that discipline me, right? Like they are the ones in charge.
Yeah, I agree that like grandparents might try to take over like the disciplining part or like the spoiling part, but my grandma was very respectful of knowing that my parents were like the main like guidance for me and my sister. And like if my parents weren't there and we were being babysat by my grandparents, they would, you know, discipline, do what they have to do to like keep us under control, but they would respect that my parents were the main ones.
Nita, Kanita, ada yang mau ditambahin lagi?
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me, Tere. Before
Yeah.
we move to the next question, yeah, I have a follow-up question, but regarding the previous question about when father and mother have different ideas. Am I allowed? May I?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to go to the previous question. So, Sister Irene, you decided to leave the room when you have different opinion with your husband. Okay, and well, I experienced this. Later on, children are growing. They can think for themselves, and sometimes I feel that my husband is wrong. So when my son came to me and said, that is not right. And deep down in my heart, I said, yeah, I agree with you. And so sometimes that put me in a difficult situation. So it feels like I have to stand up for my husband, but actually I know that my son is right. Do you ever have that kind of situation? How do you deal with that?
Very good question, Tabitha. You know, we're imperfect people. My husband is not perfect, and neither am I perfect. And especially we as a mom, we feel that we can be the middle person, like we are the middle person, you know. We understand where our children's coming from, but we also understand where our husband is coming from. And what I try to do, like, you know, sometimes the boys would say to me, it's like, Mom, I don't get it. I don't understand why dad thinks this way. I don't understand why dad is doing this way. Well, now that they are older, I would say to them, go talk to your dad. Speak to your dad about it, you know. And then I also try to help them understand from a parent's perspective, from a dad's perspective, and why he did this the way he did. And then later on, I would have a one-on-one talk with my husband. I would tell him what the boys say and what the boys think. And one thing that I always try to do is not to pick sides in a way that, you know, the boys think, oh, mom doesn't understand me. Because mom is always in dad's side, even though dad is wrong. Or I don't want my son to think also that, oh, I can get mom on my side to show that dad is so wrong, you know. Then that creates division in the family. So now that the boys are older, I always tell the boys, well, you know, if you need to talk to dad, then talk to dad about it. Dad will listen to what you have to say. But more than anything, we as a mom and a wife, we can be the glue for our kids. We can help our husband and our children to understand each other more.
9 out of 10 times, the children will side with the mom, and the mom with the children. The reason for that is this special bond. They've been in the womb for X amount of time, so on and so forth. The men are just donors, pretty much. Okay? That's just it. However, we are a part of their DNA also. So in the process, they're learning. But you're right when you say, you tend to side with the children, because that's a natural instinct. And the children will naturally side with the mom. That's why there's Mother's Day. Father's Day was only invented afterwards. Right? So it's important for us to realize as men that when we discipline or we have different ideas, it's just different perspective. And as they come to age, like my wife says, you are the glue to make it happen or make it separate. Because we all have different ideas. We're not all the same. And the way a man thinks, he's a problem solver. He wants to solve the problem. So where is that taking us when it comes to children's respect and things like this? Because of difference of opinion, right? And the husband needs to be humble enough to say, oh yeah, you know what, you're right. Let's do it another way. Let's do it this way. And it's up to the wife that the delivery of pointing out an error is a good, well-versed, sensitive approach, right? Because that can either make or break a man. Yeah. So right now, there are certain things that the boys will go to their mom, and there are certain things that they come to me for certain things. Because it's not a competition. It's just like, for emotional support, I know the boys go to their mom. But when it comes to like how to do things, they come to me.
How to fix things.
How to fix, how to do, certain things like that. And that's just where they're comfortable. And you have to have this thing that, it's okay to come to mom to certain things. You don't have to come to dad for certain things. I don't know. What do you boys think?
I think, yeah, it's absolutely right. There is a difference between the two, and when there's a discrepancy, you should be able to have that relationship or cultivate that relationship to speak directly to the parents about it. Like if I disagree with my dad or something in a way that's not, or I try not to be like mean or like doubting or as like rebellious or anything, but actually talk to my dad about it. Or if I disagree with my mom about something, I'll be sure to talk to them
I
about it
cannot hear
in
your
like a
voice,
respectful
Kyle.
way that I can. Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Just like in a respectful way. Speak to them about it.
And we do have disagreements, and it's okay because everybody's got their own opinion, and how we can work it out. We've come to a point now that everybody's got an opinion, and when we have meals, we discuss lots of things, from politics to money to opinions. It's just the way it is. Got it?
So Tabitha, the key is really just being the glue for the family. as a mom and as a wife in putting your husband and your children together, if that helps to answer your question.
Oke, Kak Tabita, ada lagi yang mau ditambahkan?
Well, being the glue, the middle person. I have to say sometimes it is emotionally exhausted.
I
but
ask,
think
how old is your child?
Okay.
Or your children?
17 and 11.
Okay.
But
Which is
well,
11
the
the
biggest
17
problem
are
is
they
the 17th
different?
one. Because now he's getting more mature in thinking. So sometimes they got into arguments, and wow. Well, I know. I think you understand the rest of the story. Being a middle person, and yeah, like you said, the glue. Yeah. Well, all this time, I kept telling my son, even though you think that your father is not right, at least respect him as your parent. Okay. But there are also times that I said man in general, because I consulted my friends, and yeah, some of them had the same problem. I don't know. It's like being. I think there is a. I don't know what do you call this, between the father and the oldest son. There is a. There's also a fight, quote unquote. So, yeah.
It's a male ego thing.
Okay, that's the word, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, difference of opinion. But also, as a 17-year-old, as a young adolescent, right? They think they know everything too. And they think they know more than you. And that's what kids go through. They're trying to establish their male dominance. Really, it's a hormonal thing. It's something that they, want to show that they're adults. They're trying to do this and they're trying to do that. Well, a father sometimes has wisdom, but the thing is, it's the approach. You have to allow them to make their mistakes, to learn from their mistakes, and you just have to be patient as a father and says, and the worst thing your kid will ever hear from you is, I told you so, right? You don't listen. But as a parent, you have not to say that. You have to say, what did you learn from this? Instead of I told you so. So there's many instances where the boys think they know, but eventually, whenever they ask me questions, I always say, Daddy, how do you do this? What's my response, boys? Boys?
Figure it out slowly.
Slowly. I always tell them slowly, right? Figure it out slowly. Because there's times when daddy won't be there. And the difference of opinion sometimes, the kids think they know, but they really, sometimes I could be wrong and I have to admit that and say, oh, I'm glad that you figured it out this way. This is great. Maybe I can learn from you. But there's got to be a humbleness on both sides. So what do you boys think?
Well, to add to that, I think, Tabitha, one of the challenge that you're facing is communication. You as a wife need to know how to speak to your husband that will make him understand where you're coming from and where your child is coming from. And one thing about men is that they don't want to be attacked. they don't want to think they're wrong either. So it's us as a wife to know how to speak, to communicate in a way that will make them understand that we're not attacking them, that we're not trying to tell them how wrong they are, but it's just a way for him to understand what the child is going through or what the child is thinking. And the same way with the child too. So, it's a communication. I think it's the basic,
So
the key.
men have this thing called selective hearing also. So remember that. Boys?
So when sorry, when it was when you spoke about the first child and the dad disagreeing, that does happen between me and my dad, and I think the question comes from does the child actually want to solve the problem? Do they think it's an actual problem? And what is the reasons why they're disagreeing? If they're disagreeing out of things that in the grand scheme of things don't really matter, then maybe the child just wants to be heard and he doesn't feel like he's being heard enough. But if it's a real problem, then that's when, if you're the child at 17, I would say, one, he needs to show that it's a legitimate problem. Have a serious conversation with the dad, because it needs to be important. Like, as a man, you're going to always face conflict later on. And so in the most respectful way, talk to them about it, not in an argumentative manner. If it's a real thing, it's something that should be spoken of. And I think that's the role of parents as well, is to make sure that their child is heard if it's legitimate. And if not, explain to them why their argument isn't legitimate, right? Think of it in a real serious way, because you're going to have conflicts in the future and it's always going to happen. But it shouldn't just be out of things that don't matter as much. Like, oh, maybe the child just doesn't think he's being heard, so he just goes on and just argues about the most randomest things. That's not a very good reason why you should be arguing, right? You should be like, Mom and Dad, I think I'm of the age that maybe, I'm not being treated the same way. Like, if I was 17 and I was still being treated like I was 8 or that I was 9, then that's legitimate concern. But if you're arguing just because your parents won't allow you to do something that they know is not good for you, then that's really different, right? Those are two very different things. And so it's either showing the child oh, maybe your argument isn't as valid as you think it is, or it's making sure that there's that mutual understanding, just like my mom was talking about. And I think that's where a mother's role can play in, because the it's much easier for me to tell my mom exactly how I feel when I have disagreements with my dad, right? And then my mom can tell me the way that my dad looks at it. That way, when I go talk to my dad, we can have a conversation from a common ground, understanding what each of our viewpoints are, right? That way, there's no just needlessly arguing between us, causing friction. There's okay, what's the root of this problem? We can actually talk about it.
Thank you. That really helps to hear from the son's side.
About the other son, what do you think, Ken?
Yeah, I think definitely. For me personally, I'm not the older son, so I don't really fight that much. But there's definitely times when people disagree, and I think parents and kids should definitely work it out, talk to each other, because there's wrong on both sides sometimes. So yeah.
I hope that helps. Any other question? Well, there was a question here. Tere, you can read it.
Yeah, I just sent you a question.
Okay. As missionaries, how do you keep your children safe from bad influence, while at the same time encourage them to minister to the community your family serves? And how to apply the principles to toddlers? Okay. Again, Everything is a foundation from the family. If the family's principles are firm and consistent, just like in Proverbs, it says, train up a child in the way that he should go, so that when he is old, he will not depart from it. So back to the basics, mom and dad, being firm in your principles, in telling your children what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, so that when they are out into the world, they can make their own decisions on what is good and what is bad. And one thing that I always tell the boys is that they need to be a Daniel. And Kyle and Kenneth can tell you a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so like being Daniel is like when you're out with your friends or when you're out in public, just be the one that's willing to make a difference, you know, that doesn't always fall, because Daniel didn't listen to peer pressure, right? He had that vegetarian diet. He rose up against when they made that decree, and he still prayed at his window. So being Daniel is kind of like being just like that. Like, don't fall into the peer pressure, but stand up for what's right.
Yeah, that's very true. Instilling the missionary spirit, though, that's mostly just watching your parents serve, making sure that thing of service, that like principle of service is actively practiced and it's real. It's not, forced or fake, because especially if they're toddlers, like if they see that helping actually is a value and helping does, bring joy and allow society to work well, then those will be instilled. But as a toddler, it's mostly just an example, you know.
Until what time are we gonna go?
Oke, kita masih punya 2 pertanyaan lagi.
Oke.
Yang terakhir, pertanyaan yang selanjutnya. Untuk pertanyaan ini ada yang mau nambahin lagi nggak, Ibu? Nggak ada ya? Oke, pertanyaan selanjutnya. What curriculum for homeschooling to be used? Mungkin ini berdasarkan pengalaman Irene pilih kurikulum apa?
Well, we used Abeka for the boys, and it's a Christian-based, and it's what we used. I tried different curriculums, but that one seems the one that fits our family the most.
So it's really what fits your family. We have to understand that we have to set the foundation for them. They're not Seventh-day Adventists, so they talk about Sunday worship, and they talk about what's that thing when they take you
State of the day?
No, you get lifted up.
Oh,
The rapture.
The rapture. Thank you. Yeah, there's certain things that we did not believe, but it was a good curriculum. Otherwise, you can mix and match them. There's Saxon math, which is specifically just for math. There's other homeschoolers. It's so many out there. It has to fit your lifestyle and your beliefs. We even tried the Amish one, the rod and staff, for a little bit, and that helped. But they only went up to 10th grade or something, because they emphasize more on work, so certain things like that. So do we have a clear answer? No, it's, this is the first time we've homeschooled, so it's more trial and error. And I don't know, what do you boys think? Which one suited you the most, or which one did you like better?
Okay, I think because we were busy, my parents were busy as parents. The one that we did was, there's a bunch of names, but it was video classes. So we would have a video and we'd watch the video and then we'd do the homework. That was the one kind of we did. I know some kids that just had a book and they just did the book and their parents were there teaching them. Our parents didn't have the time that much. And then other people do like a co-op. So that means that they do it at home for a little bit, for a couple days, and then a couple days they go with a bunch of other homeschoolers and they study with them. Or some people have tutors, and there's so many different ways to do it.
What's great about homeschooling and the curriculum is that you can try different things. Like we tried Saxon math for a little bit, then we tried, rod and staff, and you see what works for you. And it just takes like over time that there are quite a few years of schooling, and you can see which one you like that works the best, and which ones don't. And I think that's what my parents did.
Yeah, part of the reason why we chose the video that Kenneth was talking about was because we were active missionaries. We were in the middle of the jungle in the Philippines when the boys were homeschooling. My husband was directing a missionary school, and I was helping out too. So see what works for your family and do what is best for your family.
Oke, thank you Irene. Mudah-mudahan itu sudah menjawab pertanyaan tadi. Pertanyaan yang terakhir, Sister Irene, ini pembahasan yang pertanyaan sebelumnya. Umur berapa anak-anak terakhir mendapatkan hukuman fisik? Mungkin boleh diceritain sedikit lagi.
Well, physical punishment, I think personally for me, for the boys, when they got spanked, maybe like 7 up to 7 years old. That was it. I mean, after that, they were able to be talked to. And like I emphasized earlier, it is much better for me personally to speak to them than just punishing them by spanking them in their behind. That was after 7 years old. I hope that answers your question. There's one other question, and I think this, unless if you have one more, is there? Because there is a question that was sent directly to me. Can I go ahead and read it?
Oh, I want to ask Kenneth and Kyle. How do you feel after being spanked? Do you get mad or can accept it, or how do you feel?
Most of the time after I got spanked, I felt, I mean, it hurt and it felt bad, but I wasn't like the way that my parents spanked me. I personally wasn't always angry. I was just like, man, I messed up. And afterwards, like, I got my punishment that I deserved. So there was like some closure. And I can't remember times that I was actually more mad than I was like, man, okay, I really shouldn't do that. But there weren't many times where I was like, what, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I tried to do the right thing, right? Like, I wasn't too mad.
Yeah, I think the reason why is because you understand what you did wrong and why you did it wrong, and then you get spanked. If you just spank them for no reason, then that's when they're gonna get mad. Yeah, it's like, why would you do this to me? So I think understanding why is the big thing. Why you feel bad.
Okay, so spank with explanation, yeah? Or else it will be malice and anger within. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Oke, kayaknya kita tutup aja pertanyaannya karena udah lewat. Untuk keluarga Bautista yang sudah hadir di sini.
Sorry Ter, kayaknya tadi Ate Ain punya satu pertanyaan yang dia mau.
Sorry.
Right, I say, you have another question?
Yes, there is one question. However, I think this question should be answered next week, because next week we're going to discuss about biblical principles in regards to sex. Because it says here, when your children enter the puberty age, how you discuss the changes they will experience in their body, feelings, or interest to other gender. So this is a great question, and please stay tuned until next week, and we're going to discuss this even further.
Kita akan tutup dengan doa yang akan dibawakan oleh Sister Melanie. Silakan Sister Melanie.
Kita berdoa. Ya Tuhan, Bapa kami yang di surga, Bapa kami yang baik, terima kasih atas penyertaan-Mu sepanjang seminar ini dan Q&A ini berlangsung. Tuhan, kiranya Engkau saja yang memberikan hikmat, pengetahuan, kebijaksanaan kepada kami, para orang tua, dalam mendidik anak-anak kami sesuai dan seturut dengan kehendak-Mu. Berkati keluarga Bautista dalam setiap pelayanannya, pergumulan, dan kesehatan yang sedang mereka alami, biarlah Engkau saja yang menuntun mereka selalu dekat kepadamu. Terima kasih ya Tuhan, berkati kami sepanjang malam yang sisa ini, dalam nama Yesus kami berdoa, amin.